Today I want to talk about my experience working in customer service and retail, things I learned, experiences I had. To give some back history, my first job was working as a librarian, so sort of customer service. I did that when I was at college, the first year of uni, and then when I went to film school I got a job as a steward at a massive stadium in London. Although the title steward is a bit misleading, it was a very mixed job. Every week was different. Some days I was standing in the stadium watching the crowds, freezing, and other times I was in corridors directing people to lose, or guarding fire escapes, but overall, customer service. And then in 2015 I got a job as a sales assistant, working in a flagship store on Oxford Street, central London. And that's the job and experience I want to focus on today. Customer service is customer service across the board, but a selling environment is quite different to just customer service. At least that's my experience. But all of that aside, let's get down to the experience. I didn't face any backlash growing up working in customer service, but when I took it as my full-time job, I was suddenly hit by tons of discrimination. The amount of people who made it clear they were disappointed in me for doing it. They felt I was taking a step back, I was wasting my time, wasting my energy and my talents. You have a film degree, why are you working in sales? For me, I took the sales job because it enabled me to get to London. It helped pay my rent. I was doing YouTube full-time and I wanted something that was stable every month. So I joined the two together and it got me out. It got me to where I needed to be. For a period anyway. But I didn't go into the job thinking it was going to be easy, because I'm an introvert. I'm a bundle of anxiety. It's practically the worst place for me to go. But I did it anyway, and I needed any job to get me into London. I think the first thing I have learned is that working in retail is not as easy as I think people think it is. I feel that society tends to believe that working on a shop floor requires no intelligence, it's low effort, and it's not. Even when I was working in the job, the amount of people that said, you got it easy. It's one of those jobs where you don't appreciate the ins and outs of it until you've done it yourself. There's nothing wrong in working in sales. For some people, that is exactly what they want to do, and it's something they're great at. And for some people, it's not a full-time job. It's something that enables them to do their other job, which is the job they want to do. And I'm not just talking about students having a part-time job, fully working adults, business people. I met parents who were doing it to support their kids, someone had a photography business, somebody else was a pole dancing dance teacher. So again, I have so much admiration for people who work in sales, but also do it in addition to other jobs at the same time. So next time you walk into a shop and look around at all the salespeople, they're not just sales assistants, they have other parts to their lives as well. So the person over there may be an artist who has an exhibition somewhere next week. The person over there may be a magician who does parties. We all did different things. And also because we were living and working in London, where the rent is horrendous, having another job on the side, like a sales retail job, can help. It helped me. So yeah, don't diss. So there was discrimination and put-downs for simply taking the job, for working in the job, but then there was discrimination on the shop floor. Now this is the one I think I expected the most. I wasn't too surprised. Hundreds of customers were under the impression that because I was wearing an apron, because I was paid to be in the store to serve them, that they could treat me however they wanted. I did find it shocking how many of us were treated. So many customers would literally take their anger out on the staff. I was screamed at, shouted at, sworn at. I've had things thrown at me, I think. I mean, simple things like saying please or thank you are so important. It's polite. I think the lack of patience was the biggest thing. Especially when the store is packed with people. People need to be patient. But as for physical contact, I was quite surprised how much I had. Hugs, handshakes, that's fine. So many customers would forget their manners or forget boundaries. The amount of people who would touch me to get my attention, like physically grab me or pull me to turn me around. But I would have people pull me physically, they'd grab my arms, they'd grab my apron. The amount of bashing and doing this in between people, the amount of bruises I would have. So overall, I had to have my wits about me all the time. I learned to grow a thick skin. In terms of serving though, going back to what I said at the start about how it's harder than people think it is difficult to work in a high-paced, loud environment, engaging with customers and on the ball with exactly what they want. Where I worked, there were thousands of products. It's a spontaneous environment. You have to know where everything is off the top of your head. And you have to know all the ingredients inside out at a moment's notice. Every day you have to be happy and excited and sell. You're not there just to parade products, you're there to generate an income. And it can be a sensory nightmare. You have to focus. You have to be aware of everything that's around you. You're constantly on the go. And even when you think you've got a moment to breathe, somebody else can appear out of nowhere and again, you've got to go straight away. You have to be able to cope with multiple customers at once. Sometimes you're in the middle of serving a customer and somebody else taps you on the shoulder and expects you to drop what you're doing to serve them. So sometimes I was serving 2-3 customers at once. That was tough. This may sound strange, but there were times where I felt like I was a combination of a beautician, a nutritionalist, a doctor, and a dermatologist, all in one. So first of all, you have to engage the customer. That's easier said than done. As a customer, I hate being approached in stores. I just want to shop on my own. But as part of the job, you have to engage. You have no choice. So engage the customer or else. Once you've got them, you then have to establish what they're after, things that may impact what they're looking for, sometimes their price range, and sometimes you have to ask them personal questions in order to find the right product. It's not a case of picking up any old product and shoving it in customers' hands. You have to really think about the customer. My favourite job to do was work on the tills. For one, I felt safe behind the counter. No one could grab me. It was like a game. I loved typing in all the numbers, scanning things. And the dialogue with the customers was practically the same every time. There was no heavy conversations. I would happily go back and work on the till. I miss that. The one thing that took a long time to get used to was the amount of customers that were queuing, that would watch every move I made. When you as a customer are in a queue, there could be 20 of you in a line all facing one way. You don't engage with each other, you're just waiting to be served, potentially getting annoyed and impatient. But as the server behind the counter, I can see every single person in that queue. I can see every pair of eyes making eye contact with me. Hurry up! So next time you're in a queue, try not to overly stare at the person behind the counter because 20 other people are probably doing the exact same thing and it can make it harder for that person to do their job. Saying that though, I loved the till. One thing I learned, and this sounds like common sense, and it's what you're paid to be, I suppose, is to be professional at all times. No matter what you're faced with, you have to smile. Even when you feel like you're about to cry or dealing with an upsetting situation, you can't. You have to smile. Even if somebody is screaming at you, you have to smile. Even if the building is burning down, we had a few fire alarms when I was there, you have to be professional, upbeat, and optimistic. Smiling is not the same as being professional. You can be unprofessional and smile simultaneously. So I learnt to be calm and composed even when I was shaking inside. I have to be honest though, that was one thing I struggled with, the smiling, especially during the periods where I was low and depressed. If you're an introvert or have anxiety, like I do, then sales is probably not the best environment to work in. In a way, I sort of felt like the job was a performance. From the moment I walked in to the moment I left at the end of the day, I was acting, and then I would crumble on the train home. Being somebody that's quite open about their mental health, especially online, I found it difficult making videos about mental health and then going into work the next day. Because I felt like two different people. I was really upset Becca at home and smiley Becca the next day at work. There were times where I literally just kept the smile on even though I was literally dying inside. But in terms of mental health problems, things like depression, it can be a tough environment. Something else that I did not expect was the isolation. In a sales environment, you're engaging with hundreds of people every week. You literally don't stop talking. But that doesn't mean you're not alone. Some people do find that social interaction is what they need every day, but for me, it wasn't enough. I did have some friends where I worked, but that's because we would engage with each other at lunch breaks or go out in the evenings. When we worked on the shop floor, we were by ourselves. I could spend 6 hours on a till and not say a word to my colleague next to me. When you're moving around the shop floor, you're working with customers, you're not engaging with the other sales assistants, unless there's a problem, of course. But I found it so lonely. I think in order to work in sales, you need to be a strong-minded individual who is social. Somebody who gets your energy from engaging with other people, even if you're never going to meet those people again. Those interactions are what motivate you. Working on a shop floor can be so tiring though, mentally and physically. If you're standing on your feet for 15 hours a day, your feet are gonna hurt. Talking from 9 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, you have to have a strong voice. There were so many days where I went home and I couldn't talk for the rest of the evening and would struggle the next morning. I went through so many packets of cough sweets. I sort of learned to project but protect simultaneously. Project over the music but conserve it whenever I didn't need to speak. The next thing is working in retail can be quite spontaneous. When I was a librarian, I would work the same hours every Saturday, whereas in retail, sometimes I didn't know my schedules until the week before, sometimes even the night before. And in terms of weekends, I had to work every single Saturday, and for the first few months I worked every Sunday as well. So that was tough after a while because I missed so many opportunities that year because I was working weekends, and my family were at work during the week and had the weekends off, so we never met. The first few months I worked, we only had 5-hour shift patterns, so no break. So it would take an hour, 2 hours to commute in, 5 hours on the shop floor, then an hour to 3 hours to get home, rush hour. So the train in and the train out, that was my break. So that was tough, but then when they introduced the longer shifts, the breaks became gold dust. And as somebody that is an introvert, I used my breaks to the best of my ability. I put my headphones in, I tried to block everything out, I sat facing walls sometimes, no interaction, and I used the periods to stop smiling, to rest my dimples. I do have dimples, and yes, they do hurt when I smile too much. This is going off topic a little bit, but there were so many days where I didn't eat. I didn't have a break because I literally couldn't get to the staff room. So many people would recognise me on the shop floor as I was leaving. The staff room was in a different building on Oxford Street, or they would recognise me on Oxford Street itself. It was tiring. It got to a point where I was putting some of my lunch in my apron or a credit card, and as soon as I would leave the store I would sort of try and hide my identity and get to the boots a few doors down. Working without food? That's hard. Gosh, I'm off topic. Rein it in. So I must admit there were some days where I was worked off my feet because I literally hadn't eaten or breathed or sat down. So I knew that working on my feet every day was going to be tiring, but I didn't expect to be emotionally tired at the end of each day. So not only was I standing on my feet for 10 hours a day and I would commute an hour and a half, 2 hours either side, but then I would come home and just feel completely shattered, physically and internally. This may depend on the type of selling you're doing, but my job involved selling products, cosmetics, so in order to sell the cosmetics I needed to know about the customers. So I had thousands of conversations with customers. Customers would come in and you'd end up having deep and emotional conversations with them and find them products to help them, even just lift them up emotionally. And after a while, that really starts to weigh on you. There was me going in thinking I was going to sell products, and I was dealing with all these different elements to that selling all at once. So whilst you're still selling, you have to process the conversation that's going on. Maybe they're sad because somebody's died or they've done badly in an exam. And then comes the counselling part. I know one day a guy came into the store who had just lost his wife to cancer, and the wife had loved the store I was working in. So that was a hard day. It was a whole experience, every single customer, even the tricky customers. Sometimes that was fun, sometimes that was tough. I have to be honest though, there were times where I struggled to process the amount of conversations I had and the subject matter. There were days where I would go on my break and cry because of the morning I'd had and the people I'd met. I don't really feel I was prepared for that element of the job. Talking to friends is one thing when you have conversations every now and again, but sometimes the people I only met once, so if they were having a hard time and I never met them again, my brain didn't know what to think. I'd like to think that all the people that I met who were struggling are now doing okay, but every now and again that does come up in my brain. Oh, I wonder how that person's doing. Now, let's talk about music. Not all shop floors are the same, but where I worked, there was constant music at a high volume. The level I'm talking at now, I would not be heard in that environment. I would have to really pump it up. So I needed to have a strong, loud voice every single day to compete with the music. Going off topic for a minute, but the worst thing that can happen to you when you're working in a selling environment is being ill, like having a cold. When I had colds, I had no voice, so I couldn't do my job. I think not having a voice was worse than the cold symptoms, the nose running, the eyes running. When you have a cold, you're infectious, so no one wants to go near you in a shop environment. But having a cold was no excuse for taking the day off work, even if it did impact the job. In order to go off sick, you had to be mega sick. A friend of mine broke her arm and she was still doing demos with bath bombs. You know, plaster, water, bad mix. Oh, music. Go back to music. I am somebody that listens to music practically every second of the day. Even when I'm editing footage, I listen to music. Apart from when I do the audio, of course. But when I was on the shop floor, of course I was listening to music that I didn't like at all. In addition to that, they didn't play the radio, they had playlists of tracks. Sometimes 10 or so tracks would be on repeat the entire day. Songs like Sorry by Justin Bieber I heard hundreds of times during my time on the shop floor. Although I hated the playlists, after a while I knew them inside out, so I could time my shifts, I could time conversations. I knew that if I started a conversation with somebody when Justin Bieber was on, by the time we got to Taylor Swift, I knew I'd been with them for the right amount of time. I hope that makes sense. So in a way it was helpful. Music on a shop floor has the power to put people to sleep and make people energetic. I know on the main floor we had loud, upbeat music, but downstairs on a calmer floor we had quiet music. There were times where I would sort of dance to the music and it would help me, keep the energy up throughout the day, but especially on the quiet floor, it literally put me to sleep. Great for the customers, but I found it, a little bit like this. Listening to birdsong or waves does put you to sleep. It's like ASMR, working in an ASMR environment. But then we get to Christmas. I was lucky, I just missed the Christmas period. I think the week I left is the week they put the Christmas decorations up. But I have friends and family who have worked in retail during the Christmas period, during December, and it's difficult to listen to the same Christmas carols hundreds of times every day. As somebody that hates modern Christmas music, the typical music you'd play in stores, I don't think I would have coped. Changing topic though, let's talk about something more serious: sexual harassment. Some people, primarily men, would come into the store pretending to be customers, but they weren't there to buy, they were there to harass people like myself. They'd stand and watch us selling, they'd sit in the seated areas and wait. A few times customers were inappropriate. One minute we're talking about products and suddenly they're getting quite flirtatious, a bit touchy, and some would try and ask me out. The men I'm talking about were weird. 99% of the time it was unwanted and I said no. I had men pinch and slap my bum. I had a few guys corner me in the store. They talk to me like a customer, sort of get me on my own, and then sort of pin me in somewhere, and no one else would know that I was in trouble because it looked like I was engaging with a customer. Part of my job involved giving demos on hands and arms and arm massages, so seating a customer down and engaging. But some people really did exploit that element to the customer service. One time I was giving a customer an arm massage or demoing a product and they literally grabbed me by the shoulder. I think they wanted a kiss. I can't quite remember, but I know I called security. But there's so many experiences where people exploited the touch part of my job. In addition to the sexual harassment, there was also harassment and stalkers. Something I have been trying to stress this year is that you don't have to be famous, you don't have to have a huge online following to have stalkers. If someone has an interest in you, doesn't matter. Although my schedule was all over the place, the fact that I worked every single Saturday soon became public knowledge, or people picked up on that if they were store regulars. Some people started to use that against me. And once customers and people started realising that, they would come into the store to see me. And I don't mean fans, I mean people with different intent. Some would come into the shop and hang around right up until closing. Other times they would wait outside the shop and try and catch me when I left at the end of the day. I know I was taken off the shop floor twice for my safety. And before you say, well, she's a YouTuber, of course she's going to have stalkers of some kind. No, some of the people I worked with also dealt with the same things. Another colleague of mine had a man stalk her all the way to the train station. It's another reason why I'm scared to work in customer service, again, because I don't want people being able to get hold of me. I do have legitimate reasons for feeling nervous. So that's something to bear in mind. No matter who you are, be careful, be aware. When you leave work at the end of the day, don't put your headphones in until you know you are safe. It happens. It shouldn't be the norm. We shouldn't have to deal with it, but you just have to be aware of it. Be safe. That's the end of my serious talk. Let's go back to more happier stuff. This is probably one of the better experiences I had. Because of where I worked, it was a huge tourist spot. So I got to meet people from all over the world. So there were different languages, different accents. That was probably one of my favourite things about the job. I have never met so many people from China before. I met so many inspirational people. Literally thousands of conversations. My brain can't even pick out the conversations, there were so many. There's so many more things I could say, but I feel like I have been talking for an exceptionally long time. Also, my back is giving way. I'm literally supporting myself right now. I'm in that much pain. I hope this has given you an insight into some of the experiences I had when I was working in retail. If you haven't worked in retail, then maybe it's given you an insight into what we potentially deal with. For those of you who do work in retail or customer service, especially during the festive period, I understand and I applaud you. It's tough. I don't know how to end this because I've been talking for so long, but if there's anything I've missed, please comment downstairs below and I will talk to you as best I can. Back. Right, I'm now going to go and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.